Stay right there. What are you waiting for? Kill them! Kill them both! No, wait a minute. Is it money you're after? I'll give you as much as you want.
May the saints forgive you, because I won't.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for asking to come on because I was very flattered. You're very cool. You're considered very cool on our part of Twitter. You have a great show of your own. You just have well, I have not read it, full disclosure, but you have a brand new book. So please plug that. Please plug your show and any projects that you're working on. And well, you can even introduce what we're going to discuss.
Sure. Yeah. So, my name is J. David Osborne, and I'm a writer. I started writing about 15 years ago. I was part of something called the Bizarro movement, which a lot of, talking penises and houses that are also sandwiches and things like that. But I have moved, not past it. It's still in my DNA. And I now write the kind of books that I would have liked to have read when I was a younger guy, right? So a lot of cyberpunk, a lot of ninjas and swords and mutants and monsters. And my newest book is called Gods Fear No Better. It's pretty huge. It's almost 600 pages. It is a cyberpunk epic that about halfway through begins to get very strange and esoteric. And pretty soon, the characters are fighting giant centipedes and going to hell and meeting enormous, mothers of pain and gods with buffalo heads and things like that. So it's a lot of fun. There's also a lot of dick jokes, and it's a very silly book at times. My podcast is called Agitator. I host that with Kobe Losak. It's been my buddy for 15, 20 years, something like that. And that started off as a Takashi Miike appreciation podcast. We would record it on Tascams. So at first it was really, some might say it was kind of a difficult listen because you're kind of getting the ambient noises from both of the places that we lived, which at the time, when we started it 5 years ago, we both lived in different hoods, basically, lots of crackheads, homeless people. Since then, we've both kind of turned our lives around. But those early episodes in particular are really fun, interesting documents of two guys who are in their approaching mid-30s and are coming face to face with like, hey, we got to do something to change our lives. And then doing that through the Tao of Miike, basically, searching for kind of the philosophy and the workman-like approach to craft and story and filmmaking that we could apply to our own lives. And in this episode, we're going to talk about Miike, specifically one of his films, Ezo, a time-hopping Christ story.
That is certainly one way to read the film, and I think that we'll be in alignment at the end because I think that it makes sense from both sort of sociological, maybe esoteric Christian level, and then also Japanese Buddhist esoteric level, which is definitely how I approached it. I just want to shout out someone who gave me some notes on Kukai, since I'm not a Japanese esoteric Buddhist, my friend Jigoku Keiki, who's been on the show a few times. he actually kind of filled in some of the contours of what Japanese, well, I'm going to call it Tantra, but it's not technically Tantra, but what that looks like and what some of the themes, how I could relate them to my system. So I just want to say that. So yeah, I definitely approached it as like a Buddhist ontological mythopoetic film. But we'll talk normie too. Like I know you like to have podcasts that are like a playful dialogue.
Yeah. No, that gets me fucking fired up. Like, let's go. I'm interested.
Well,
I'm treating this like I'm listening to the podcast and I just get to chime in with some dumbass stuff. So do your thing, man.
well, I consider you obviously like the elder podcaster between the two of us. Like I have some experience, but I mean, I feel like you have an incredible way that you articulate it that people relate to, and I think I'm still a little bit we'll call it Kabbalah schizo, where it's not quite worldly enough for some people to sort of penetrate whatever I'm saying. So I'm still working on synthesizing that, but I think that you and I can actually have a really interesting discussion about this.
I
But
think
I
so.
want, yeah, for sure. And I want to start out with the episode you did on getting lit with Matt S. Simply because you kind of came out of the broom closet. I don't know. Well, I don't know if that's true, but I don't know if that's true. So I'm just thinking. But you did say that magic is real,
Mhm.
and that you do consider yourself. I don't know what kind of like identity label, or if that's even important. It's not that important to me, but you did say that you kind of you articulated a recipe for war water, at least Sarah described it. So that was really interesting to me. You also related a story about using the axe to split the storm in half. That's at least how I understood it. Simply because there is we'll call it quote unquote spell in Dutch powwow to do something very similar. So I thought that's really interesting, right? Because I recognized it right away. I was like, oh, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I basically chaos magic was very popular in the 90s and the early 2000s, and then it fell out of favor with most people in the magic. Okay, here's what happened, right? Like basically identity politics happened. And so chaos magic became very passe because it kind of requires this taking from wherever you can and using what works and leaving the rest behind. And that became out of like people didn't like that because it felt disrespectful, like you were minimizing the deeper traditions of whatever particular thing you were taking from. And people really did get into like they got deep on certain type, whether it's Kabbalah or OTO or, paganism or whatever, right? It became kind of the thing to dive deep and to really kind of understand, certain texts like Agrippa or Crowley or whoever. But what I think is so interesting about chaos magic is that it does have its own texts that dive kind of deep into why it works. Like the octavo is one of them, for example. And so the way that I would position myself is that, I grew up Protestant, right? Not necessarily Pentecostal, although there was speaking in tongues in the church that I went to. And then rebelled against that completely. Went through my Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett atheist phase. Picked up the Buddhist books by what the hell, the hardcore Zen guy. I'm talking. Brad Warner was his name.
Oh yeah, I know. I've talked to Brad. I've actually wanted him to come on the show. Shout out Brad if you're listening. I don't think he does, but if he is, come on the show, Brad.
Yeah, so I loved hardcore Zen. I found it in a bookstore that went out of business since then called Hastings. And I really liked the down-to-earth simplicity of just shut up, sit down, and stare at a wall. I thought, oh, that's really cool. I like that. His second book was, I think, Sit Down and Shut Up was the actual title of the book. I love that one too. And so I got really into Buddhism, right? I have like on my arm, it's kind of hard to see here. How do I do this? I have a little Om thing that I got there when I was 18 years old, which has offended many people since then. They've been like, I worked with a Hindu guy at one of my first jobs as an intern at Charles Schwab. And he was like, that symbol is very important to my people. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I just kind of got it. So I got into that and then kind of fell out of that again. And then I started thinking to myself, hey, I'm a white guy. I'm from, this is kind of my religious background, right? This Christian stuff. So I looked more into some Christian writers who I think are really good, like Richard Rohr, Peter Rollins. They all had really cool things to say, especially Peter Rollins in his book Insurrection, about how, the cross itself is like God killing himself and how that's the most metal thing you could possibly be. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I dig the Christian shit. And then I found chaos magic. And what I really realized is that I got to keep genre hopping, basically. Everything stops making sense to me the longer that I think about it. And what feels real to me are spirits being real, a real factor of life. That includes ghosts, demons, things of that nature. Sigil magic being 100% true. I mean, there's no other way for me to explain how my life works than through that. I've seen ghosts 4 times. I've fallen into like a time slip when I was out on a hike in Santa Fe. Too much weird shit has kind of happened. So like you take the sigils, you take the spirits, you take the demons, and then the kind of packaging that you put onto that, the story, the skin, changes based 100%, and I say this without shame, based on how cool I think it is. Because I think coolness and aesthetics are very, very important. What are some of the other key things? So like the reality of the human soul, reincarnation. I guess that does it for the tenets, right? But then, so I'm like a kind of person who just sort of thinks that a lot of things are true, and that I'm interested in syncretism and finding the common ground in these places, and then understanding the differences in a way that makes each of them uniquely powerful in their own right. Hope that made sense.
Absolutely. Well said. I want to pick up on something that you did touch on, but it's something I also wrote down. So I'll revisit it just for my own personal curiosity, but I think it's actually interesting for listening. I know Gordon White was involved with this idea of, he didn't call it this, he called it regional animism. I'm calling it a more, we'll call it elevated, air quote term, a geo-regional or regional geo-ontologies. So why I call it this is because obviously I come from a Buddhist perspective. So I agree with you in the sense that everything that you said, you could easily say that that's a dharmic view. I mean, I don't think there's any contradiction. Most things are of your mind, but then there's like that 10% maybe of reality that exists a little bit outside. So I agree, like spirits are real. The forces of the world are very real. What is phenomena? Well, we'll get into that also in regards to the film. But I think, I have a chaos magic background too. I love Peter Carroll. I mean, that's like, I have a bunch of rumors that like that follow me in there. Oh, about culture and stuff. But it's so interesting. It's so foundational. It's like you can just take that framework and then apply it to so many different things. And so I think it's a really useful sort of way to look at the world. And you are not rooted maybe in one of those esoteric Western traditions.
No, 100%. Yeah. And the kind of rootlessness, I think, is really important, especially, chaos magic, it came from the UK and thrived in the US for its time. And I think that it makes sense from an empire standpoint, right? That you'd go to all these different places and you'd want to take the good things from the culture. But again, that was the problem with the cultural appropriation argument of the past however many years. I think it's dead now. I don't think anybody really gives a shit. But it's also a really good thing, right? Because you get really good foods, you get different ways of thinking about things, and you get new spiritual practices. And I'm glad you brought up Gordon, because that's That's a buddy of mine. He's a really foundational, person. Finding the chaos protocols in a bookstore in Brooklyn randomly was like, the books come to you when you need them. But I was just in the esoteric section and I was just not feeling anything that I was looking at because everything was beginning to look like a textbook. And I wasn't looking for a textbook. I was looking for something very practical. And all of a sudden you pick up this book and it's like, here's how you make money using magic. And I'm like, oh, perfect. That's what I want to do. I want to make money using magic. And I've been a member of RuneSoup since I was like one of the first paying premium members on that site. And that it just changed my whole. I mean, he's definitely like he's moving more towards I don't know. I'm not sure if he calls himself chaos. No, he does. He still does. But I just think it's a cool term that needs to come back. I think that the Grant Morrison in a trench coat version of himself who's like screaming at people at DisinfoCon and talking about how he got abducted by aliens at Kathmandu, that guy needs to come back. Not the Grant Morrison who hides in a castle and writes books like Luda, which are disappointing.
Well, I did see your picture with him, David. So
I got Samara. I got Samara off that. I pissed everybody off so bad because they did this at Morrison Con. They did this roundtable thing where 4 people at a time could go and talk to him, and I just dominated the conversation. Like the 5 minutes were mine, and I was gonna ask him everything that I could. So, but yeah, no, I have nothing but respect for the guy, and he's one of the heroes in my pantheon, and I just think that I want to see that come back. There's nobody talking about those things anymore, right? In a public space the way that he was.
Absolutely. And I think that just looking at their work, not just him, but maybe Alan Moore, just grouping them sort of together. Although Alan Moore definitely has more institutional, we'll say magical background, but I think they arrive at the same place. I mean, it is a very parafictional landscape that they build. They add real world mythology, real world history.
Mm-hmm.
They remix it, very chronopoesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they remake the world with the word. So this is actually something you also touched on in the Getting Lit interview, and I want, if you want to discuss that, I would love to hear like some of your thoughts on that, like how words are magic. Contain maybe they're vessels, but maybe they're not as imperfect as that word sometimes implies.
Interesting. Now, when you say not as imperfect as that word implies, can you unpack that just a little bit? I'm ready to rip, but I just want to know what you mean.
So there's an idea in Buddhism that words are sort of the primordial seeds, the bijas, though. I'm sure you're familiar with that term. You talked a lot about Vedanta before. So we have the same idea in Buddhism, but the idea is a little different in that we can also remake the words through ritual prescriptions, through ritual actions, ritual methodologies. You can break the aggregation around the words and kind of let it be free, which is empty. So it's just really the sound, which is really just capturing the 4 elements plus mind into space. So I think that words are both substantial and empty at the same time. So I guess I'm throwing you a little non-dualism right off the bat, but I think you can take it.
No, I like it. Yeah. So words as magic, right? Okay. So when people say that they have OCD, they're like, oh, I'm so OCD. Like I have to make sure that I fucking wipe this many times when I'm done poop. Like whatever, like that's not OCD. Like, to me, I have like what's going on in my, like if I was and maybe I was at one point, like a peasant in medieval Europe, I would be the one who was just like constantly beset by like demons and stuff and like kind of screaming in a mud pit, like in Hard to Be a God. But like, I think that the thoughts that you think are extremely important and the words are just the manifestations of, like, one thing I did, like I got a buddy, his name's Chris Sacknessum. We used to do a podcast together. And we were doing a podcast one time and we started talking about like what's going on when I'm actually speaking. And I became very cognizant of the fact that there's nothing happening in my head before I speak. The words are just coming out, and it freaked me the fuck out. Because what is that? They're just kind of happening. Now, in terms of words being important, but also empty, what's really interesting about something like sigil magic is that it requires the writing of words and then the removal of vowels, meaning that you are taking away the actual prescriptive meaning of the word and just leaving the symbols there. Interestingly enough, I believe that's how the original Bible was written, no vowels. And so what I think is interesting about that process is that the words themselves, obviously words are important in things like demon summoning and ritual and what have you, but every magical practice that I've seen of it, it does seem to be that you have to get beyond all the connotative meanings of the word and turn it into pure sound for it to actually be useful. It's like it's a musical note, and all the meaning around it is dissonance, right? And if you clear out that dissonance and kind of empty it out, you have the pure force of the word, right? So the word itself means things because in its kind of primordial empty form, it has a force that then implies this kind of tree that comes down of meaning. That's why there are so many words that sound like they should be that kind of word, right? Like words for ugly things sound ugly. Now, so what I guess what I think is really interesting about that is that words have power specifically because at one point they had a meaning and then you've stripped them of the meaning, right? Down to the pure source, the original archetypal form of the word. That's a cool concept.
I totally align with that. So thank you, David, for explaining that. I have two more things for you, and then we'll kind of get into it. But I want to say that this question was perhaps pre-planned because it is a Buddhist metaphysical concept as well, but it also comes up in the film specifically. And if you're going to locate the film in sort of this Buddhist metaphysical landscape, when I think I can make a case for doing that, I want to try. Yeah, I think it'll be really important because the word is also the Buddha's. So there is a kind of element where the text reaches apotheosis, then it becomes a deity. What are deities in Buddhism? They're really the word, but the word is really, as you said, empty. So yeah, there's something really profound about that. But circling back to storms and geo-ontological relationality, I didn't really call it, but I'm sure you understand what I mean.
I like it.
I know you talk a lot about well, the idea is that you kind of have a relationship with the spiritual beings of your area, particularly. So that's like the first level, maybe you could say, or maybe even the primary level of your, I don't want to say hierarchy, but it's kind of like the pantheon is right there. It's like the world that you walk on. That's the spirits that you have a relationship with. I also live somewhere where there's a lot of storms. So I always, when I hear you say that, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting because obviously I'm very drawn to them. It's a different kind of storms. It's not tornadoes, it's hurricanes and oceanic storms, but I think it's the same in many ways. It's very of the sky and, of the day and night, we could say. So I just wonder if you could speak on your fascination with storms and how it relates to any metaphysical or cosmological. Does it have any metaphysical implications for you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So growing up in Oklahoma, tornadoes are just a part of life. And there have been a lot of transplants to Oklahoma recently because California has become unlivable, et cetera, et cetera. And I interact with these people all the time in my day job. And they all say the same thing. They say, I told my friends that I was moving to Oklahoma. And they said, are you crazy? There's tornadoes there. And I started to realize how strange it is to people because tornadoes happen all over the world, but they're very, very much focused in the Midwest of the United States. And I think what that has, I feel like if you were to grow up near a mountain you would necessarily have a spiritual reverence and attraction to mountains, mountain ranges. Same goes for rivers, valleys, any geological form that is extremely distinct is going to necessarily have a spiritual significance to you if you live there. And what's interesting about the tornado is that it's impermanent and extremely destructive, right? So it's a worship not of, this kind of testament to time and grandeur, right? It is a brief, violent phenomena that as soon as it's done, everything goes back to being nice again. Every once in a while, God just puts his finger down from the sky, messes up his Legos, and then the finger goes back up. And that's kind of a fascinating thing to think about. In the original God's Fair No Better draft, and this will probably come up in something that I write, the storm fighting was much more explicit because the main character is basically a weather control guy, and his job is like Cyclone City is actually beset by constant attacks from sentient tornadoes. And what he's done, he's part of this group of clerics that are contracted by the city to go out and do their rituals and make sure that they keep splitting the tornadoes off or the city won't be there anymore. And then at the beginning of the book, right, like the tornadoes have mysteriously disappeared. He doesn't have any work and therefore he doesn't have any money. And that's what sets him out into the world to go on his adventure. But I think that the Kiowa and Comanche who live here have the tomahawk tornado splitting ritual. And I think that what's so interesting about it is that I just really love the idea of the storm understanding what they're doing. And the fact that if you kind of fully inhabit, like it's not people trying to understand the storm. It's people believing that by nature of the storm being from the same place as them, it will understand what they're doing, right? And a lot of animism is like that. A lot of it is very, intuitive. It uses the tools that you have at your disposal. Like a lot of Appalachia folk magic is like this too. And then what's really weird about it is that it works. I mean, there's never been a case of somebody splitting a storm and then getting killed by a tornado after that. There's no like, haha, Reddit atheist gotcha moment where it's like, looks like that didn't work. No, it works, but how? Fun fact, side fact, I've spoken to meteorologists here because a little bit south of where I live in a town called Norman, there's a big meteorology center. And at one point I was speaking with somebody who was studying tornadic phenomena. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad I get to talk to you because I have so many questions. I said, I understand functionally how a tornado happens, right? Like I understand the swirl of the clouds. And I said, but what actually causes it? And he paused for a second and he's like, man, not very many people ask that question, but if I'm being honest with you, nobody has figured that out yet. There's theories, but after, all this study and all this technology, the genesis of it, right? Because I was expecting him to say, okay, what happens is when you have a cold front and a warm front and they collide together, it creates this weird soupy, and they know the conditions that lead to a tornado. Again, the warm front and the cold front and the clouds spinning and forming a hook. But he said, I understand what you're asking. That's not what you're asking. We don't know why they happen. Thought that was kind of interesting. So we don't know why they happen. We don't know why splitting them with a tomahawk worked. But at the same time, we kind of do. And that's because we're a part of our environments. And our environments understand us just as much as we understand them. And there's no problem in actually just speaking your own language to your environment. And you can expect that it will understand you. The same way I don't have to speak tornado to know what it means. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I mean, the way you live your life is your greatest ritual. That is the great work, right? So there's even you could even make an argument as to why the tomahawk works. And interestingly, in Tantra, the deity Ganesh, so the elephant-headed deity, although we call him Ganapati, the Lord of Hosts, interestingly, in Buddhism, he also holds an axe, and his axe also severs the smoky dragon of the eclipse, Ketu. So even right there, you can see there's an implication. He's the only deity that wields an axe, especially in Tantra. It's like very implement specific, we'll say, iconography. So I think that's really interesting because he fully clears Ketu from a birth chart if it's in a negative position. So it's kind of like the macro and the micro, like the as above, so below.
I like that. That's cool.
Okay, well, I'm glad you like it. So we can definitely start on the film because I think that I have to lay out a little bit of the Buddhist metaphysics as I see them. So obviously not a Japanese Buddhist, but I'll do my best. So I think that the film itself is actually much more easily understood as a Buddhist idea. I think it's much more, this does not contradict like a esoteric Christian reading of the film either. And I think there's a place of synthesis. But as I said, there's both a depiction and a text that refers to this place called the womb realm mandala. So it even is depicted in the film about 13 minutes in, which is interesting in and of itself. But the womb realm mandala is led by this figure called Mahavajrayana. So this actually has an interesting name in relation to our discussion of storms. So his name means the great lightning strike or the flash of thunder. Sometimes it can be said, but he's like the great flash of thunder. He's like a special Buddha. So he's the Buddha of the white family, meaning not racial. Is the white family, meaning he is
Just means the good one, right?
Yeah, I mean he is there's 5 families, right? So that's how Buddhist color magic really works. Is there are 5, you could say primordial Buddhas. Each of them is assigned a color and a direction. And then there's like a bunch of Buddhas, a host, you could say maybe, that serve underneath them, but they're also them. So that's again, relating to the discussion of like what a word is. And then there's also like a dualist, but also non-dual quality to words. Basically, he's the white Buddha. He clears the sin of ignorance. So this is a really important plot point, as well as a really important like Buddhist note, is that there are 3 primary poisons, especially in the tantras, that got transmitted to Japan. So we actually have 5 in Tibetan Buddhism, interestingly, like a rose, you could say. But there are 3 in Japanese esoteric Buddhism. So it's lust, aversion, meaning wrath or anger, and then also ignorance. So these 3 words are even repeated several times throughout the film, not just several times, quite a few times. So I think that's kind of interesting. So the other idea that I want to sort of lay out before we start is I think, it's not really what I think, but Buddhism kind of, especially Tantric Buddhism, posits the idea that the world is a carnal ground. So, but it's not just the carnal ground, right? The carnal ground and the garden, it's both at the same time. It's non-dual. So if you understand the film as being within the womb realm mandala, you can also say that it takes place in hell, because if you understand the womb realm mandala, there's actually an above and a below. Because that's why there's 5. 5 plus 5. 5 plus 5 is 10, right? So 10 is kind of like the number of perfection. This is very common esoteric. But yeah, so that's basically it. So I think it's a hell journey. And I think he's coming up. But I think that everyone that he encounters is actually a ghost or a demon, and he's reaching his apotheosis as a wrathful Buddha. So in Japanese esoteric Buddhism, who is the wrathful Buddha equivalent to Vajrayana? Fudo Myo. So Fudo is like the famous, everybody kind of knows what that iconography looks like. Has like a crazy looking face with fangs. He holds like a zigzag, it's a flaming thunder sword. And he also holds a pasha, which is a noose, which is to subjugate enemies. So how I see the film is that he is this wrathful Buddha who he doesn't know it. He starts off as just like every other ghost on the carnal ground, or every other whatever they are. Maybe he's a human, but he's still on the carnal ground. So he starts off like that, and then he kind of gains in his awareness, very adamantine, right? So I said, like, there's a Christian element that, you know, and interestingly enough, the idea of Fudo is the Vajra body. So the Diamond Thunder or adamantine is another good way to that body of this higher Buddha. So this higher Buddha doesn't really have a physical body, although Kukai does complicate this. Obviously, that's like very meta, but we won't get into that. But I just think it's interesting because this idea of like the Diamond Thunder sun, because specifically that practice refers to like you are the sun. That's kind of how the text describes it. You're supposed to envision yourself as adamantine in nature, which is crystalline, or the quality of ice or crystal, or I've said crystalline, but yeah, the quality of like water, like you're perceiving water, you're looking at it with the light passing through, and it appears turquoise or appears lapis, but it's actually clear because it's just water. So that's really the idea, is like being adamantine. So you're kind of like, you're spiritually empowered. So there's even a theosophical idea like Christ consciousness. I think personally that there's a relationship between those two ideas, but I'm not trying to offend the normies or anything. I just, the idea of like everything fine, comparable.
How would that offend them?
Well, I'm sure you're aware of this, David, but there are a lot of people who consider themselves very like trad life, or very anti-magical or anti-magical thinking.
Right. The people who you fight with on Twitter. I'm kind of over the target on that one. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, no, that I'm tracking. When Jesus dies on the cross, he goes down to hell to die for people's sins. And I think that there is a lot that you could unpack in the died for the sins part. I'm really looking forward to Mel Gibson's sequel to The Passion of the Christ. I hope he gets really weird with it. Because if he does, it would be a movie very similar to Ezo, right? And this is what I'm talking about this kind of magical thinking, the ability to not think like, oh, well, if I extend out past what my doctrine allows me to think, I'm going to be in trouble for some reason, right? Because there's a lot of space that we can fill in there. Like, what does going to hell to die for sins look like? Like, could it potentially look like becoming a wrathful deity, right? Does it, to overcome ignorance? Like, what do all these words actually mean? Again, stripped of the context. Something very interesting is synchronicity. You used the word crystalline. And I saw a tweet recently from somebody who said that there's a perfection to the best pop music that has a crystalline feeling, like you feel that kind of way, right? And what that makes me think of too is, again, just kind of becoming these waves, these vibes, right? Like the idea is to imagine yourself as kind of like those old Capri Sun commercials where people would turn into like liquid metal, like kind of like that, or Terminator 2, right? The guy who turns into the liquid metal. But the crystalline idea and relating that directly to pop music connects to me, at least in my fucking weird brain, to kind of what we're talking about here, like vibrations and sounds and melodies and harmonies and everything sort of coming together. Does that track?
Absolutely.
Right.
No, you're totally on it, because it's a Silver Surfer. It's like, he's made of quicksilver, but there's another application, like in alchemy, as referring to like, he thinks of things in alchemy. He was saying you think of things more magical, but all magic, as I'm sure you know this, David, but all magic is really alchemy. Like you can distill it down to like the essence, and then everybody kind of knows what each other are talking about, regardless of what system you're using, because it's like it's the base language. Quicksilver has to be transmuted before it can be taken medicinally. So there's and there's also spiritual ways you can transmute Quicksilver to give it spiritual property, which we call Parad. Yeah, in we'll say greater Dharma, because it's not just Buddhism, but they also do it in Indian Tantra. So it's really interesting, because that's exactly what I was referring to. So it's like if you want to use like a contemporary, like more hermetic OTO kind of idea, it would be like the Aeon of Horus, like he moves from Hode or Mercury into Tiferet or the sun. So like that is sort of like the completion of that here, his specific hero's journey. Because as I think, or not as I think, but I posit that there are actually multiple hero journeys. There are
Oh, I
lots
like
of,
that. Let's
and
go.
there are,
That's
okay, well,
good.
because I've heard you refer to the hero with 1,000 faces, or maybe you didn't say that specific both, but you referred to kind of a Vishnu figure, we'll say, like who is multi-faced, and exactly,
Yeah.
how Vishnu is depicted. He has 1,008 avatars. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also relate and say that Shiva also has his heroic emanations, and you can also say that for Shakti. Now we're getting into like much more tantra territory here, David. So, but I apologize for that. Okay, well, I'm just saying that I think that each of if you want to say that there's like a cosmic trinity, I don't know. I think that you can be flexible with the numbers. I don't like to stay fixed in like what kind of model universe is, because I think that leads people into kind of faulty thinking. But yeah, I think that if you consider those three, Shiva, his wife, and Vishnu, kind of like the primary deities of the Leela, we could say the divine play, then the idea is that the wife of Shiva, she is the play, so she is the Maya, she is the illusion. Vishnu is the Mara, so he is the delusion, because he has to be in the world. That's his whole point, right? He has to become a hero in every yuga, in every age, in order to solve the paradox of the Leela. But he's really a pawn, and he kind of is ignorant in his participation, you could say. I know this. I just alienated like all Vaishnava Twitter, all Indians hanging out there. But
You're about to get some spam calls.
no, it's okay. But so Shiva's brought in by his wife specifically because she's longing for him. So what I'm trying to say in this roundabout way is that I think that they all can take expressions in the play, but their reasons for doing so are actually much more complicated than I think that the normative hero's path or Aeon of Horus idea allows for.
Right.
That's what I was trying to say. Sorry about that.
No, I like that. I like that. And I like this idea that there's opportunities for transformation. I mean, this is just a perfect magical way of thinking about all this. Is like if you have everything as this binary black and white, good or bad, hero, villain type thing, you are severely limiting yourself, right? It's kind of like people who get spooked out by summoning demons or whatever, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's like, why? Because those are the bad things, right? It's like, well, kind of, yes and no. They're definitely on one end of a spectrum, I would say, but it doesn't mean that they're not useful or heroic in their own way. One quick thought, by the way, completely random, but you'd mentioned earlier about the colors, right? How there are important colors in this way of thinking. I was just thinking about like this wise old sage giving a dharma talk on these colors and the importance of each one, and all the monks, they stand up and they leave. And then there's one monk who's colorblind and he's walking out like, what the fuck does any of that shit mean? I have no idea what's going.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because it actually doesn't matter, because because that color is just the name of the waves that you refer to. Like
Right.
sound is also light, obviously. That's just a given, right?
So
the idea is that the names are just the kind of words or the words that we call colors are just the names of the light. We're differentiating between them. Oh, I don't think it really matters, is because it's like the lights that we see are not the illuminant, don't have illuminant qualities. They're just gross phenomena, you could say.
Interesting. But yeah, no, I definitely like this idea of the multiple heroes journey, because it also makes me think of, I mean, you have to figure out what a hero actually is in the first place. Like, is a hero just somebody who successfully completes their task? Or is a hero somebody who does something that's morally good, and then that's becomes troubling because then it's like, well, what about what they do to make sure that the good thing, like, is the moral person somebody who never hurts a fly, or is the moral person somebody who kills thousands of people in order to advance what's ultimately the most moral goal? And I mean, sometimes like I felt like a hero before for holding a door open for somebody. Like, what was my journey that led me to hold that door open for that person? And was potentially holding that door the most important thing I could ever do in my life? Because if I didn't hold that door, that person was going to become something that would make the world a net negative place. Alternatively, like, am I a hero by being cruel? Like, is cruel, like, one of the, I used to be friends with this, Buddhist monk. I won't name him because we don't really get on anymore, but he's a Scottish fellow. And, one time we were having beers and I was talking about this, that, or the other. I can't remember what it was. He's like, David, you know what your problem is? He's like, you have something called idiot compassion. And your idiot compassion is actually hurting everybody around you because you think that the way to be good and to be heroic in your life is to be compassionate to everything. And there are points where you don't need to be that way. And so, yeah, that idea is going to stick with me for a while. Like, the multiple heroes journey. What does that actually look like? And will people connect with it? People, my understanding, I remember when ESO came out in 2004, I believe. I remember all the reviews for it because this was like, Miike had his renaissance between 1999 and 2001. There are about 8 films in that period of time. There was Dead or Alive, Bitchy the Killer, Gozu was a part of that, Audition, yada, yada, yada. And then it got a full US DVD release because he was so big at the time. And that brought everybody to this kind of screeching halt. Everybody was like, what is this? And so I watched it back then, and then I watched it with Kelby for the show. And I had no idea what anybody was talking about because I thought it was phenomenal, right? I mean, but why I say that is because this film represents, I love the idea of ESO as a different type of hero's journey that is inscrutable if you're thinking that a hero's journey has to be this one thing.
Well, that's really the tantric element of the film, is that he is the wrathful Buddha, but the wrathful Buddha is also the higher Buddha. So his intention is to really clear the hell realm. You could even say that's a big part of like Japanese soteriology, just broadly, even in non-esoteric Buddhism, is to like cleanse, or not even cleanse, but just to raise all the souls or all the ghosts or all the demons that you see throughout the film. You're to raise them out of hell, and maybe that requires killing the corpse. So that's a very important topic.
Oh, that's so fucking cool. I love that. Save the demon by killing the corpse.
Because you're not supposed to be attached to it, right? Like it's just for it's just like your short life, like your short human life. So you're supposed to like appreciate the things that are here. And that, like your friend said to you, that's very true, because you need to have like what they call discriminating awareness. So if you want to use a Kabbalistic way, I'm kind of good at both, to be honest. But I'll just use both. Is that it's the idea of like Deborah and Hesed together. So you're using like a very discerning kind of like you're the fire of consciousness, and you're looking at the supernal ocean, and you're seeing the reflection. So you're not projecting yourself infinitely, because that's already what Hesed does. You don't need to apply mercy in the world, because it's already like when you're at Rigpa, that's kind of the idea. Like you're at the pristine, that diamond thunder consciousness, then it doesn't matter. You don't need to project yourself outwards, because the love is just an empty space, or the loving kindness is an empty space. So That's kind of the idea. That's a much more Christian Kabbalah idea that I just laid out than any other particular Abrahamic religion. I just want to say that. But yeah, I think it makes the most sense. And I think it also relates a lot to the Buddhist idea of just permeating awareness plus bodhicitta. So you have both at the same time.
And you're clearing out this hell realm to what end? Elevating the demons does what?
Well, you're liberating them into samsara, like you're liberating them back into the cycle. Because if they are
Oh, they're stuck. They can't reincarnate.
No, because they're going to perpetually be in the hell realm. Because if they don't know, if they are ignorant of the world as it is, they cannot perceive like the non-dual sort of reality, that they themselves are perpetuating their own existence in the hell realms by partaking of its pleasures or its, like I'm skipping way ahead, but like the families in the carnival ground, like the old carnival ground.
Yeah. Or the vampire salarymen, right?
See, that's really interesting because you would have to say if he is Fudo or Daikuten, which is the time king. So people who like Tantra or know the Buddhist iconography or even Hinduism, they would know him as Mahakala. So he's the great black time king. Everybody loves him when I post him on Twitter. Well, really go for that one. But yeah, so he can be both is what I'm sorry, what I should have said is he can really be both. Fudo, Mahakala is also an emanation, but he's the Lord of hosts. And he doesn't want to rule them, but they all follow him around. That's often why even Shiva, just normative Shiva, is depicted where holding a damaru or like the little tantrics hand drum. They follow his heartbeat. That's kind of like the metaphor. So he serves, but he serves as like they all want to go to him because they know through him they can reach like a higher state of consciousness. But most of them are just demons and ghosts on the carnal ground. So they're just really subject to their own desires. And I think that is a lot of what, in my opinion, that's what the film sort of touches at. Like these people are perpetuating their own samsara. You see the infinity symbol, especially at the end, like with the
where
light
he cuts the
the band. Exactly, because even in Tibetan Buddhism, we visualize that. We don't do it in that exact way, but yeah, the figure eight and the light passing through, and
the Mobius strip or whatever.
Exactly, and how it travels through the nadis, and then you see it kind of like closes up, and you can see that the light's really him.
Yeah, that's cool. No, that's really cool. So they can't reincarnate because what in your estimation causes a spirit to get stuck in that way? Is it over attachment in life, or does something happen during the transitory phase, or is it just another like karmic debt that has to be overcome? Like what's going on? Like what somebody dies and becomes a demon in hell. Why?
So many things, partly your karma, partly it's if you believe it. I think that's, I think as a fellow KO myself, I think that we are on the same page in that way. Is like the things that you believe definitely come into manifestation. The spiritual self is not the end, but what is the spiritual self? I think that's like the great metaphysical question. Buddhism response to that was saying it's empty. So there is no fixed self. It's always like in flux, you could say. So it's also that's very interesting, right? So I think that sort of answers your question too. Is like, why can they not move on? Like, why are they fixed in this eternal sort of slumber, you could say? Because people are fear. So that would be one. So Fudo particularly, he's to overcome fear and obstacles. And that's like a big part of it. But then, as I said, there's the three poisons in Japanese Buddhism: lust, wrath, or aversion, and ignorance. So ignorance is actually the greatest sin of all. And so that, at least in a Buddhist view. And so that's also why Mahavarachana is so important, because he eliminates ignorance through the lightning flash or through the lightning. And it's also the sound. So to bring up something that we discussed before, it's also like it's the perceiving part of the womb realm mandala is the knower perceiving the known. So standing in the middle of like an 8-petaled lotus, you could say, and you're looking out at each different petal from the 9th position. So in the center. So you're kind of perceiving all the different contours of the landscape. So
I'm looking at the womb world right now. This shit looks crazy. I'm checking it out right now as we speak.
Fact.
Yeah. But Jamie, pull that up. Pull up the womb realm mandala. Wow, this shit looks super tight. I can't. It's not like a high res picture though, so it kind of sucks. But no, that does look super interesting. I'm sorry, I got distracted looking at this. I lost the plot.
Don't apologize at all, because it is interesting, and I think that people would actually get a lot out of it, because it does flash for at least a few minutes, 1 to 2 minutes, right at that 13-minute mark. The woman's narrating. I think it's like we'll call her quote unquote the whore character, and she's narrating it, and but it's flashing the womb realm mandala. So I think that's really interesting, and just because, as I say, it kind of follows through that whole theme. Like there's a lot of womb, kind of like dark mother, Izanami, Izanagi, like the Japanese twins of the underworld. If you want to say Kabbalah, it's like very Tomiel from Klippa, like the twins, who are kind of like the multiplicity of expression in the world, rather than a singular or the unity.
Let me ask you a speculative question, and the answer doesn't matter to me because a part of me thinks that these kinds of questions are stupid, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How much of this do you think that Miike is doing intentionally, and how much do you think it's channeled? Or I guess the screenwriter. I forget who wrote it.
Well, it's interesting because I think that you can consider, well, you've kind of touched on this before, so I'm not copying you. I'm just giving you my like kind of synthesized answer, we'll say, is that I think the 2 vehicles, maybe there's 3 vehicles that are really important for Magick. One is obviously writing, literature. We discussed that. The next is obviously music, because sound is also the word, you could say, or light, or, it influences perception to such a high degree that it's part of that magical ritual composition, like everything in music, all the layered parts, how it goes together, the grammar of it. That's really, there's something very metaphysical about that. And then film, maybe you could say that film is the greatest sort of like the apotheosis of both of those 2 things, because it is visual, it's audio, it's linguistic, there's light, there's sound, there's everything, right? And then it's also the person sort of deciding how it will look, like cinematography, obviously, but there's more to that, because as you noted, there is a particular fascination I have with color, and I think that also comes from, because I am a Buddhist, so Buddhist color magic, that obviously is primarily how the world makes sense to me. But then also I think when you're looking at other systems like Kabbalah or any of the other systems, really, color is so important, and for also magical experiences. I think people see color a lot, and I think it's a basic way to describe similar experiences that are maybe hard to describe universally, like outside of your system. So I like color, but I think it really matters. I think a real mage maybe would intend to, craft his vehicle in the most metaphysical way possible. That's what I would do.
But the reason why he is a mage and why he's able to do films like this, Gozu is another one, right? It's pure impression, right? It's no prescription, just impression. Is that I think that, and this goes back to words just becoming sounds and kind of losing their connotative meaning, is that he seems completely focused on just making sure that like the craft works, and that's when things actually begin to move through a person. And so I've read his diary on the set of Itchy the Killer, but I would have loved to have been able to read a diary of his on the set of Ezo and just think like, what is he actually thinking? Because I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. I think that when it comes to crafting a movie like this that you can watch and have, hallucinatory 2 hours of just, what the fuck is going on, but still feel like there is a point to it, which I do think. Side note, there are two types of movies, right? There's weird what the fuck movies where you're like, okay, they're trying to be weird. And then there are these kind of confidently weird movies where you feel like, well, they're clearly doing something. Importantly, not getting caught up in whether they actually had like a thesis statement that they wanted to get across to you. But what I'm obsessed with is this esoteric, weird vibe that you can get into. And I think you specifically get into that through works and through not turning your brain off, but on allowing yourself to become a vehicle for this kind of creativity. Again, does that make sense?
No, I totally agree with you. I think you're right. I'm hesitant to say channel simply because I think that relies on something we call higher power. And it's not that I don't believe in it. It's just that I think we shouldn't rely on it. So I think that there is a thing in Dharma. So you could say if the film is like a metaphor for the womb realm Mandela,
Right.
or at least the map of that. And maybe there's an idea also in Magick, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that you can look at things and maybe you have a magical experience or listening to things. I know I've had visualizations during certain, we'll say podcasts or, certain people talking, maybe they'll talk very Kabbalistically. I've had a few people on that are really good at that, even better than me. And I consider myself pretty good. So, but, I think it's possible. So I think that you can take one hermeneutic and then you can sort of like, that's what I would interpret it. This is like a Dharma film, in my opinion. And he's translating this womb realm on into film, but he's also bringing it through his own experiences. So what I'm talking about is experiences or consciousness, not necessarily like he's traveling physically to another place or dimension.
Sure. Yeah. What you mean is like when you're writing something, for example, and you're trying to get across the walking down a street or buying a coffee, right? You're talking about, you're describing all the sights and smells and sounds and things like that. And nothing's being channeled per se by doing that. The spirit of the coffee shop is not trying to come through in your writing. Similarly, when you do something like this, there's no channeling agency from the womb realm Mandela into a film like Izo. But for whatever reason, Miike is translating that in a way that doesn't necessarily indicate a figure that necessarily wants to be heard. It's a kind of like an overlap, like a reality overlap of something that is just being transcribed instead. Right.
That's a good word. That's a great word, transcribed. And, I'm being a little anti-supernaturalist, which is my personal inclination, but I think the truth is that Buddhism really does allow for this mind stream transmission, and especially Tantric Buddhism. So I shouldn't discount it. And I do believe in it. So let me say that. So I do think that the people who reach high enough craft, if you have studied metaphysics to any significant degree, and I'm quite sure he has at least some, he's read things, he's heard things, there's a way that you can be aware of it just through pop culture. I'm not saying you'd be like, a master of the worlds, just like watching like Thundercats, but maybe there's an idea that like all of those things kind of have certain ideas, especially animated film particularly. So, he is Japanese. I think that, even the figure Izo, like he's a character that is in a lot of manga, a lot of anime. So Rurouni Kenshin, the character, the main character is based on him. There's a character in Gintama that's based on him. He is his own hero's journey that takes multiplicity, that takes many sort of directions. So I think that's interesting. And also, like, he was an assassin, anti-shogunate. So that's also interesting because he is like a little bit of an anti-hero, even in his historical person.
Right.
So I don't know. I think that I think it's intentional, but I also think you can say it's channeled. I'll complicate it by saying that.
Complicating it is always good. Um, yeah, I think that a movie like movies that you watch, the feeling that they give you, I'm a believer that all movies give people a certain feeling and that it is universal, that it's actually not different, right? But I just think that their reactions to that feeling are different. So if you're being as simplistic as saying like, well, that film made some people really happy and some people really upset, clearly it gave them different feelings. No, 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 it gave them the same feeling and then their response to it was different. And so within that, I think that Ezo puts you in a very interesting place where you feel like you're seeing something very true. And not a lot of movies do that. Now, seeing something true doesn't mean that you can make any sense of it, right? So you can watch something like Ezo and be like, yeah, I don't know what it was about that movie, but that just felt real to me. And going back to my understanding of its initial reaction in 2004, it also, if you show people things that are true, some people get really mad when you tell them true things. You know this. I follow you on Twitter, right? So I think that of all the movies that Miike has done, I think there are a few that are true movies, not that there are like fake movies, but that there are movies that tell some kind of truth. Ichi the Killer is one of them. Gozu is one of them. And Ezo is one of them. And the rest are kind of up for debate. Agitator's also really good. And then people's reaction to it, whether they hate Ichi the Killer because of all the violence and rape, or they hate Gozu because what's going on with again, with, oh, by the way, with Gozu and the womb realm, you'll remember the end of, have you seen Gozu? You've seen Gozu, right?
Oh.
Yeah. At the end of the movie, like his mentor is reborn out of a woman's vagina, right? So there's that womb again.
That also happens here.
Yeah. Oh, right. Correct. And then Ezo just kind of feels real. And I think that makes people very uncomfortable. I think real things make people upset.
I totally agree with you. I promise I've calmed down on Twitter to a significant degree, David. I swear.
I think it's entertaining. I watch it like most of the time. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not sure what you guys are fighting about.
Usually nothing. It's usually nothing. It's fine. Eating class.
Yeah. But
I just like to dance, you know. You have to like Twitter's about words. I like words, though. You know, it makes sense to spar with words, but you don't always have to be mean, or sometimes you be a little mean, but sometimes you can be a little playful. And I think that that's kind of what I'm trying to do a little bit more, maybe in my like less angry days. So the older I become. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, you're good. What made you start the podcast?
So, okay, this is a great question, and someone has actually several people have asked me, but so it originally started as a graphic novel when I was like 20. Well, I'll give it a magic number. I'll say that it was 22, but I was actually like really 19. So I was like in my undergraduate like degree, whatever. I had a friend, really good friend, who was at OCAD, which is like the Interior Color Art Design. And so he was doing like drafting or some shit like that. And so he was really good at, because my dad's Chinese. So basically I grew up with Chinese comics as like a huge part of my life, like major. And a lot of the comics that my dad grew up with were translated into Indonesian. So my dad would, when he would go to Asia, he would buy these like huge stacks of all these Wuxia kind of comic books. So then he would be like, you have to read these in Indonesian and Bahasa and learn like what the fuck they're talking about. So basically that's what he made me do. So we were hugely interested by Wuxia comic books, which are called manhwa. So it's about a secret society of underground magicians, but in Chinese cosmology, magicians are also sword fighters. So I think you'll identify with this a little bit. Is that they always have both. They always have like both potentialities. So if you've seen like Hong Kong cinema, like the 70s, 80s, 90s, where it's swordplay specifically, they'll usually have magic powers, almost always. Or they'll be able to fly, or they'll have like, they'll talk about Taoism, or a little bit about Buddhism, not so much. But so anyways, that was basically the idea. Is there's a category of literature. It's called Zhenghu. It means rivers and lakes. So it's kind of mercurial, kind of very much quicksilvery, you could say. And so it's the idea of this like above and below, like a secret society that exists within the normal reality. So that's what a threshold is, right? And one of the ways you can describe Chinese saints is you can say they're Shen is a saint. So like an immortal, like a mountain immortal, like you referenced like at the very beginning, how some people are very attracted to mountains. And of course, that's like the primordial father god or grandfather god, definitely. And so, and also the storm god, because the storm and the mountain have a like an innate relationship, especially in their mythology. So basically that's the idea, is that you know, you can cross through the threshold. Maybe you could say it's like the threshold that you sowed. I often joke about this with my friend the Sachki on Twitter, like that, because there's an idea in Kabbalah that the threshold is also at the moon, but it's there, but we don't actually know it. But it's a perceptual thing. I'm talking totally perceptual. So it's just like once we acknowledge it, there's like a crystal castle at the moon, like very Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon is actually like a perfect hermeneutic to do Kabbalah. That's kind of like a far off tangent.
Nice.
My show started as this project that I shopped around, tried to get published. Then I like went on with my life, did other things. And basically I was like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can translate this idea of like this world that we built together, and like he obviously animated, I wrote it. And so I was like, okay, so like, how can I bring that into like audio e-zine form? That's kind of my idea. I guess it's very millennial, very hipster, like aging hipster kind of idea, but you know.
That's cool. No, that's cool. Yeah, see, because it's interesting because all podcasts do kind of have that origin story. And I don't think people talk enough about how podcasts are this translation of a literary or mythical idea. And I think once people take Rare Candy, for example, like Rare Candy is a podcast that began with two guys who have been friends forever, who were just kind of responding to the insane COVID moment that we had in 2020, right? And it's branched off into things, and now it's this humorous podcast and all this stuff, but it contains that initial seed of the COVID mania that happened in 2020. Agitator is a podcast, again, that I said at the beginning. It's like two dudes who are down on their luck, and they both have babies and live in the hood, and how do we elevate ourselves kind of out of that? So it is interesting. Perfume Nationalist is this way. I'm So Popular is this way. Like there's all these interesting origin stories that you kind of, once you understand them, you crack the whole podcast. Like the most famous podcast in the world, Joe Rogan, right? Like his was initially like his buddies and him smoking weed and talking about conspiracies, like on little webcams, right? Like very primitive webcams. And that spirit goes all the way to the highest levels of American government, to the point where he's influencing elections. And that, I think, is the very interesting artistic value in the podcast, and why so many people shit on podcasts too. It's like, oh, are you a white dude with a podcast? You're not a white dude, but oh, you're a white dude with a podcast? Yeah. It's because it's because they know that podcasts, if they make it out of their infancy, there's a high child mortality rate with podcasts. But if they break that barrier, basically, they then become these organic, interesting things, right? And the birth of every podcast is that initial story. So I think one of the reasons why your podcast is so good and keeps going is exactly because it has an origin story. Like the story of a podcast can't be, we're going to start this to talk about movies and then sell subscriptions to pet food services, right? Those never work. That's why so many like come up and then they die, and they come up and then they die. Like they're actually, with every successful podcast, there has to be a mythical story to it. So podcasters stay winning.
I totally agree, obviously. So podcasts, they're winning.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that, I think COVID was a kind of threshold, or many of us, or all of us maybe, even if we reach different conclusions or different states of consciousness afterwards,
Mhm.
in my opinion, it was kind of there was a theurgic element where they kind of, we were kind of maybe forced, but also pushed. We also had to use self-power and or push ourselves through the threshold. So I
Mhm.
think that happened. And I think a lot more people are ready to hear metaphysical ideas now. And so that is definitely part of it.
I think so too,
This
yeah. I mean, like, COVID for me was such a fucking death and rebirth type thing. Like,
absolutely.
my whole life burned down because of that.
Mhm.
And it burned down in such an interesting way where, um, canceling was a thing back then, right? Not so much anymore. But, I mean, we recently just had a white lady who said the N-word get, like, a $500,000, USAID, CIA bucks. I'm convinced that whole thing is to start a race war.
Oh,
It's all
absolutely.
fake. Um, but back then, like, I was very reasonable about everything, and I was like, "Hey, guys, I think that maybe, everybody just needs to get a little healthy and, take some of these supplements and be reasonable," and everything disappeared, right?
Mhm.
Like, my entire, writing career, as it were, evaporated. My friends all disappeared, and then I go through, like, this kind of dark night of the soul type thing, and then I come out on the other end, and I have, like, better friends and more success and more money, and, uh, it was a total threshold moment, and now I'm in my, extremely powerful phase of my life, and so I'm like, "Oh, man," but I couldn't see it at the time. At the time, I was like, "Damn, this fucking sucks." But, that's kind of the Russian nesting doll fractal nature of every incarnation, right? Is like, probably when I die, I'll get out of it and be like, "Oh, yeah, that was all like that COVID moment stretched out over 70 or 80 years." And then you come out of it and you're like, "Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I get it now. I get what was going on there. I was developing."
Yeah, and I think that's even what the film is about.
Yeah.
Like, I think that the demarcations of time, like why I think that people find the film, I don't find the film challenging. I'm like you. I loved it the first time I saw it. I didn't really understand it.
Mhm.
But like I think I've watched it 3 times. So, time is always divisible by three. That's what they say. And so, but I didn't plan that. I had to watch it again, obviously, for this conversation. So,
Do you have a favorite scene from the movie?
yes, actually, I love the prolonged fight scene
Yeah.
with the SWAT guys first, and then he has to fight like Yakuza guys, and then he has to fight like the biker gang, and with the baseball bats. It's like all very classic. If you like anime, if you're a huge weeb like me, that's
Mhm.
like like I love all of that. It's like just my Chonbaro dream. So
Yeah, and I really like how in the sequences in this movie, it's taking the kind of tropes that are usually used towards a different purpose, telling a much more kind of three-act structure, um, hero's journey story, and removing them from that context and appreciating them for how cool they are in and of themselves, right? Like, the setups and the fights are cool in movies outside of the stakes of the movies. And then when you get to the end of it, it turns out the stakes are actually much higher and more metaphysical than any of the movies that it's referencing when it does those fight scenes, right? So it's kind of like it's isolating and distilled, and I don't know. I mean, even like the cost, like his mask is really cool, which I know is like such a base, kind of analysis of it, but he just looks cool too. So the whole movie is just this really great aesthetic experience on top of whatever underlying spiritual message it might have. By the way, those two might, like, a purely aesthetic thing may in fact be better equipped to act as a vessel for truth than something with a story.
that's quite interesting. I'm glad you said that. I totally agree with you. Because aesthetics is kind of like a violence of consciousness.
Color
Like
magic. Yeah.
that's right. So you can penetrate people's consciousness, lay the seeds of dharma.
Mhm.
So even if people don't understand the film or the book or the plot, even if they don't even understand the superficial nature of it, the ideas can sort of stay with them, travel with them through space
That's
and
it.
time.
That's it. That's it. That's it. That's 100% it. That's exactly what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. And that goes back to when I was talking about like, what did Miike understand about what he was doing? And that was the point that I was trying to make with that, is that people could see it and not necessarily understand the, I guess we could say, deeper meaning of whatever. He could make it and not understand it. But, and this is my artistic philosophy with my books as well, when I'm writing a book, if I lean in as hard as I possibly can towards the aesthetic cool of what I'm doing, I have complete confidence that it will transmit something. And it's not something that I intend or understand or know why, right? Like this book right here, I don't know if you do a visual element or not, but this is the book, right? If you do, there it
Great
is.
cover. Everybody
Um,
buy it.
Thank you, thank you. This whole book was just like, I wrote it in 500-word chunks every morning. And every morning what I would wake up and do was just like write the coolest shit that you can possibly think of, right? But what emerges from the book when I went back and had to edit the whole fucking thing and come to an understanding of like, to make it make sense, right? I had to make sure that the whole thing made sense. I was like, wow, there are some really interesting, again, pertinent to our conversation, a lot of womb metaphors, motherhood metaphors. There are snakes giving birth and women having to fight giant babies and death and rebirth and hell descents and alliances made with demons and things like that. In the moment that I was writing any of that, it would be 5 o'clock in the morning. I would have just, maybe worked out, maybe not. And I sat down understanding what had come before, and the goal was just to write the coolest thing, right? So aesthetics, I think, color magic, you don't necessarily have to know what exactly you're doing. But I do think that the best vessel for a kind of animistic, spiritual truth is to just kind of make something as cool as possible and to not corrupt it with your own thoughts, right? Which will happen, right? You'll be like, wait, I'm writing the scene where a giant RoboCop mech with a deer head is fighting a mushroom zombie thing. Like, what is this about? I'm like, make a lot of heads explode and limbs get blown off, and make the fungus, creep up the leg, and he has to figure out how to, you know what I mean? Rambling a bit. Sorry about that. But I really do think that there's that like in the moment aesthetics maxing that necessarily leads to spiritual truth.
No, you're 100% right. You're not rambling at all, because the Sephir have actually a natural arrangement.
Hmm.
So the color densities, even if it's imperfect, like even if your intuitive way to go about it isn't like the perfect hermeneutic, it's not like very autistic, gay, or Chinese.
I hate that shit.
Okay, so it doesn't have to, because there's a natural way that the colors flow into each other. So the technical part matters if you're trying to do gross outer magic. But if
Mhm.
you're just
Mhm.
doing it like an intuitive creative work like you're talking about, that's totally fine. Because then the words will contain the seeds that they need to.
And the reason why I hate that shit too is because it leads to people arguing about shit that doesn't matter. So I'll speak from a place of what I understand more, which is Christianity, right? From the time that I was a very young child, I didn't understand why there were all these different churches. And you'd ask questions, right? You're a kid, you ask questions. You're like, well, why is like I remember one time talking to a person and I was like, "Are you a Christian?" And they said, "No, I'm a Catholic." And I said, I think I was like maybe 10 or 11. I was like, "Well, that's Christian." And they're like, "No, it's Catholic." And I was like, "Well, what do you believe?" And they go through it. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. So that's Christian then." And they said, "No, it's Catholic." And these are kids talking, right? 10, 11-year-olds, whatever. But it turns out that shit never changes. It never gets different, right? It's like, no, we're different because this, that, and the other. Like, we have really cool looking churches, and you have, you know, bingo halls with crosses. I'm like, okay, fair enough. But that's not really that different. We don't necessarily, like, we read the same book, right? Yeah, sure, but da 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 da. And so the reason why, again, to go back to kind of the beginning and why the chaos magic stuff is interesting to me is that I feel like people get lost in these kind of they get lost in these kind of details. And I know that vibe is an overused term, but I think that just thinking like a dog about a lot of this will get you further than thinking like a person, right? It's like, what sparks joy? To quote Marie Kondo, you know? Now, here's the thing. I'm a big fan of this podcast, and you get in the weeds, and I fuck with that too. But I fuck with it insofar that I think that it's interesting. Where I don't like it is where whether it's your haters or whoever, like where that would be like a reason to not engage with the things that you're saying, right? It's like, well, we disagree on this little thing. Does that make sense? Like,
Absolutely.
I think both are cool, right? Like, I think diving deep is really cool. And I'll get lost into these like hypnotic trances where you're talking about the way this particular deity, you know, their red face and their fangs represent this. I'm fucking vibing when I'm hearing that shit. I'm like, this is so fucking cool. Like where I stop is when somebody's like, okay, no, I'm off the train because you said that this deity's dagger was 2.5 feet and it's supposed to be 3 feet. Like, that's stupid. Like, division makes no sense to me. It's not the specificity, it's the division that specificity tends to incur in autistic people, to be fair. Right. But
No, you're totally on. So this is the thing. I totally agree with you. For me, as long as I can understand the general esoterica of a given system or religion, I'm
Mhm.
cool. I'm good to go. Like as long as I agree with it and it makes sense to me, I'm fine. I can. There's a there's an idea that Nick talks about from Occult Rejects. Is that there like you can see the seed beyond the system.
Ooh, I
What
like
is it?
that. Yeah, seed beyond the system. That's tight.
So you kind of I call it like breaking the klipas. I'm sure you've heard me say this
Oh
before.
yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, you were so so it's post-conceptual. It's not contained. It's dancing. I guess that's the metaphor. Like
Mm.
it's the flux. It's not the it's not the aggregation. So you're kind of like letting it go, just being like, yeah, like you do. Like you're well, my idea is that it's kind of we're transitioning into like a psychic aeon kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
no,
the
we're in the
tech,
dominant of wider inclusions right now. Yeah, we've moved. We're in the dominant of witchcraft right now. There've been different dominant. There was the dominant of uh, it was Charles Ford that talked about this. Like, basically, we're moving from a science era to something called the dominant of wider inclusions. And people who can think like us are going to eat during this dominant, right? And it lasts beyond us, right? My son will come up through this. It'll last 2, 3, 4, 500 years, right? And the people who are going to be left behind are the people who encounter ideas and those ideas stop them dead in their tracks, right? I'm the kind of person who it doesn't matter what kind of idea it could be, right? It could be the most controversial idea you could think of. I'm not afraid of exploring that,
no,
right?
absolutely.
Like I hear that and I'm like, all right, well, let's hear it. It's like, where'd they get all those shoes from? And how come the tattoo numbers only go up to a certain number? I'm like, okay, I'm hearing you, I'm listening. That's the mode that you have to be in. I mean, like, if you approach an idea and it makes you recoil and shut off. If you begin thinking thought terminating cliches, you are not going to make it.
100%.
Stop. Full stop. Like, you're not going to make it. So you have to be able to, I remember that I was trying to articulate how some of the more Christian beliefs that I have, like how they mix with my more animistic beliefs, and how Buddhism comes into it. And you get these people on Twitter who are like, well, that's not what it says in the Bible, so I'm afraid you're wrong. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to make it. Like, you're an NPC. And you might have a great life and whatever, but you're not the guy for this time. And I'll do one more detail and then I'll stop. We have Twitter and the internet. That is the dominant of wider inclusions. That's why so many people have gone completely insane, because we're now presented with a smorgasbord of different beliefs and fake shit and real shit and conspiracy and non-conspiracy and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of these people who did not get involved in chaos magic have no idea how to navigate any of this. They don't know how to shrug off the wrong shit. And they don't know how to interrogate their own beliefs. They don't know how to pursue taboo shit. And it drives them completely crazy because they went into it with this rigid, dominant of science mindset. And now they're all fucked up. And they'll continue to be fucked up. So all I'm saying is, if you want to just develop a little bit of elasticity if you want to survive. Otherwise, have fun not thriving.
I totally agree with you. I've been working on a speculative series called Iona of the Daughter that touches that idea of like moving, being flexible through the Aeon and through like what that means and its aesthetics and its sort of presentation. So yeah, I think it's a synthesis of the text with discernment, obviously. Not everything's meant to go together. Not to be, I'm not anti-theosophical, but I'm just saying I think that they probably made some mistakes. And so maybe it will take like a Chinese autist like me, well, I'm not really, but who's really good at Kabbalah. Maybe I just will take someone like me to like put it together, synthesize, syncretize. And I'm also really interested in this idea of the kind of like weird American Christianity, but also like the modern American Gnosticism. And it's been kind of reinvented and tried several times, and I think people are ready. So I think synthesis, what does Christianity look like in the specificity of the land that it arises? So I think this actually speaks to what you were talking about. Like, what is the relationship between Christianity and this kind of like regional or just animism more broadly, or the existence of spirits? Well, I don't think it's actually different, because we can view it as the mountain god is at the top. I'm not saying that's Jesus or anything, but that's like you can say it's God in the Old Testament at least. So he's the angry storm god sitting on top of the mountain. Okay. He's like very Shiva-like in some ways, very Rudra, at least from the Vedas. And then he has like his hosts, but his hosts are also him. They're also like emanations of consciousness. So like his anger emanating outwards. So the closest expression actually to his true nature is in the nature spirit. So this is actually a very Buddhist idea, is that the yakshas have the most potential to climb the mountain, kill the thunder god, or kill the god of death, which happens in the film. He kills a general who's holding the skull. That's very Yamataka. Yamataka is like, or it's not Yamataka, excuse me, it's Yama. Yama is the Vedic and Buddhist god of death, so both. And that is exactly how Shiva kills him. He severs his head and he puts it on. And what does the head look like? It's a buffalo. It's kind of interesting.
It is. It's very interesting. Yeah, because you probably saw that tweet that I retweeted. It unlocks so much for me, where this guy was like, somebody told me that America is actually a Shinto nation with all these, kind of roadside statues that are inhabited by in memoriam of, however you want to put it, the land spirits of America. So it is interesting to me that, we're a Christian nation, so to speak, but I don't think that America is actually Abrahamic at all. I think it's much more animist and weird than that, right? Because if you're driving through Texas and you go through Amarillo, there's this huge white cross. It's the biggest cross in the world, and it overlooks like oil derricks, right? The kind of Reza Negrestani cyclonopedia, oil as eldritch god kind of thing, with this giant white cross overlooking it. And then as you drive through America, there are Paul Bunyan statues and statues of Civil War generals. And the town that I live in has a bunch of statues of like jesters, which is very interesting. I don't know who approved that. But Buffalo and Native Americans, and there's been some very strange statues that have been put up lately too. But I kind of think that because of, Hollywood, the Hollywood sign is a religious deity type thing, right? Like America's status as a purveyor of dream translation and David Lynchian vampirism or what have you. It's not all negative though. Some of it's really good too. You'll go past lawns that have Saint Francis of Assisi and an American soldier giving a salute and a generic angel in a bird bath, and then you'll see you see a big cross. And like where I live, there is a Vietnamese Buddhist temple with like cool Buddhist shrines everywhere too. It is the melting pot in the truest sense, in the most chaos, magic, animistic sense. And any landscape that you go to is dotted with all of these shrines and stopovers and holes in the wall that create what I think is the actual American religion, which is dream, right? It's the dream country.
Totally agree.
We emanate out from that. And then we call ourselves a Christian nation, which is also true.
It's also true. That's the interesting thing, is like sometimes people have a hard time with admitting that, but even I'm not Christian, but totally fine with me. Because the truth is that you touched on it exactly. And it is drawing from that tweet for sure, is that America's weird Christianity, it's esoteric. It's always been esoteric. If you look at ghost dance religion, if you look at like Sundance, if you look at the rain dance, they all took on Christian ideas. They weren't afraid of it, and then it permeated back outwards into the kind of churches, like maybe similar to like the kind of church you went to as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's an anthropologist from the University of Virginia. He said that the snake handling cult actually is very much like a practice of, like, I think he said it was a Cathars or some like Gnostic group, or the Ophites. And then there's also like a Native American component, and then there's also a Missouri snake cult that the, I guess, slaves practiced. So you can see there's like these universal weird things that kind of permeate into the institutions, but we see now post 2020 especially, but I think it was happening way before, they're crumbling. And this is even, of course, I don't really believe in astrology. I know this is a whole other tangent, but no, so the astrology kind of confirms this, is like the Saturn and Neptune are in a conjunction. So you have like the king of gravity and like the king of decoherence, and like what's happening. So Neptune is kind of burning away. You could say it's very smoke life, very acidic in its property. So it's burning away like I know everybody loves us, the black cube. It's not really the black cube, but that's one way to kind of describe it, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the snake handling shit. I wrote a book called The Snake Handler with a buddy of mine called Cody Goodfellow. And it's about, I don't know if you've seen the movie DOA, but the whole idea is that that guy gets, poisoned. He's got a day to live, and he's got to, fix all the wrongs that he did. So we did that with a Pentecostal preacher. At the beginning of the book, he reaches into his mailbox. Somebody put a rattlesnake in there, and it bites him. And he's got a day. He's a very corrupt guy who kind of runs the drug trade in this Appalachian town. And he's got like a day to right the wrongs before the snake venom kills him. And of course, it's got a lot of body horror shit. Like, it's not normal snake venom. It, makes them all weird and purple and shit. But the Pentecostal snake handling is interesting because it's kind of like they go back to that original Adam and Eve snake, and they're like, we're gonna dance with it. Again, that idea of dancing, right? Like, it's not gonna bite me. Like, I'm not gonna be hit by it. A lot of literalism in America, right? There's a lot of metaphors that become a little bit less smoky and a bit more literal when you get to America. I don't know. I think this country's fucking really cool.
I do too. I think that it's it's like with all esoteric. I always describe it in Buddhist terms, but there's like an inner outer secret dialectic. So you could say there are 9 layers, you could say there are 7 layers, or you could say there are 5 layers. So regardless of the system you use, I'm kind of flexible with that. So regardless of the system you use, yeah, but the superficial density matters. So even if people are saying like, oh, the flag means freedom. Okay, so just say it very superficial. That can also be a relative truth. So that can be true, right? Like you understand that perfectly. So there's nothing wrong with that just because it's superficial. Oh, well, still the truth.
Yeah.
And we're back. So I know we were talking about something interesting. Now I can't remember.
No, we were talking about how cool America was from this kind of interesting Shinto angle, right? And I think if I can divert the conversation a little bit to
Absolutely.
to writing and where writing is right now, I just find it interesting that so many writers currently are not part of this dominant of wider inclusion. Like, it's kind of fascinating to me that most traditionally published writers are so ideologically captured that they can't inhabit these kind of interesting places, because books in particular, I think that movies are the best at visual shit. Video games are the best at puzzle solving and interactive shit. But books are the best at this mode that we're talking about, of ideologically, brain-wise, being able to flit between different modes and to present many different angles of whatever it is that we put our attention on, right? And I think that's what's missing, right? Like, most books are very much trying to get across like one point, and not a lot of people are exploring or having fun. You don't have to take that if you got nothing, but I had to say that.
No, I was actually hoping you would discuss writing a bit. I just felt ill-equipped to kind of discuss it with you. But, I think you're totally right. And I think you're touching something that's maybe even primordially true, is that all occultists, or all good magicians, you could say, all white magicians or all gray magicians, they're all writers in some way, because you have to kind of be able to remake, like, just because Crowley says in whatever book in Liber Rush, okay, so say he says, oh, do this, get up every morning and, do this, whatever, banish and pentagram. I don't even know that about that. But anyways, we're just saying speculatively. So the way he relates it is actually different than it's practiced in the Golden Dawn. And it's actually different than the way it's practiced in Astrum Argentum at different degrees of the orders. So they actually modify it as you go up in understanding. So that's kind of interesting. But if you kind of are approaching it like what you're saying, like more fresh, and if you have the understanding through the experience, through the experiential wisdom, which is more the current Kalpa that you're talking about, kind of like more of a intuitive awareness rather than maybe a tech. Although I agree with you, and you made a great point about this, is that text is the confirmation of those experiences. It shouldn't vary so widely from the text, but at the same time, maybe you're having those experiences extra textually.
I think that the most important mode to be in, if you're a writer, in Papua New Guinea, a lot of cargo cults popped up because they'd get like airdrops from US planes. And so there's, well-documented stuff about them building planes out of bamboo or whatever it is that they have in Papua New Guinea. But the idea of the cargo cult, I think, is the most important idea that a magician can work with, right? So I like to think about the way that I think about things in terms of a cargo prophet, where I don't understand what it is that I'm doing, but I will build effigies and I will practice things that intuitively make sense, and I will explore things that intuitively make sense without necessarily understanding what size rivet or lag bolt or screw I need to put whatever piece of sheet metal on a plane to make it actually work. And I think that's the dominant of wider inclusions. I think that science has gotten us to this point where we all have these computers that we carry around and none of us understand. And if that's not a signal that you should stop trying to understand it and start understanding it through a lens of a cargo cult, then I don't know what is. So that's chaos magic, that's writing, that's everything. Like, we're all just cargo prophets that are building effigies outside of our ken, right? That we hope translate some kind of underground River of Slime Ghostbusters 2 type shit to the reader.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. So, that's what it is. It's all about playing with it, not being fixed, not,
Mm-hmm.
it's dynamic. It's very dynamic. It's not being stuck in it and not being stuck in the old, like the confines of the ritual systems. I think that it's okay to like let things go. It doesn't mean you can't hold on to something. Sure, cool, everything's great, but I'm like, what is useful? I'm a big pragmatist in that way. So I just look at things and I'm like, what's ritually useful? Like what's like theurgically useful? What's useful for people's consciousness?
What do you think
So,
is ritually useful? Like, what do you do?
okay, so I wake up every day, maybe like 4:35. Do water offering, sang offering, light offering, just like you were talking about. Like I use a different cargo call, you could say, because I use Buddhism, so it just from a different place maybe. But and then I do like a daily sadhana. Then I might do Vajrasattva, so that's also referenced in this film as the sort of hero anti-hero mixed together, because the light side of Fudo is Vajrasattva in the worldlier form. So even though I'm saying there's a higher Buddha, and there is, he actually has both emanations. So going along with that kind of snake imagery you were bringing up, like the guy who has the snake around him, like you could call him tentatively the prophet, he could be said to be like a emanation of this Vajrasattva character.
That's interesting. I like that. I like that a lot. Have you fucked with Thai occult magic at all?
So as all good jungle agents, I'm very familiar with it. It's a big part of the diaspora culture, and it's a big part of just being from Southeast Asia. If you're ethnic Chinese from Southeast Asia, that's the magic that people like. Now, in my opinion, there is Tantra only died in Southeast Asia about 200 years ago, probably a little less. There were major reforms though in the 1870s that sort of obliterated. They had it was almost Tibetan. Like it was like steeped in esotericism up to a specific point, and then they made these minimalist reforms. So everybody would have to, like the synchronize, I guess, with the king in Bangkok.
Right. Yeah.
So the idea, so basically the Theravada became like much more Protestant, quote unquote, in its presentation, but there still is esoterica. So even though I'm not Thai magic or a Thai person, there is a layer I can understand because it's so similar. So to answer your question, I have not particularly fucked with Thai magic, but there's a significant degree that I can see that the things that I have played with are very similar.
Yeah. I'm doing a podcast tomorrow with my buddy Brian, Reverend Janglebones, and he's into that shit heavy, right? Kelby actually has a Thai amulet, and it's really funny because you'll go on like these websites and they have like their big cartel description of what it is. And they're like, this is a very powerful amulet. It's got child bone in it and prostitute bone and murderer bone. And it's really good if you want people to not fuck with you. And I'm like, I love the pragmatism of that. Like, yeah, give me an amulet with a scary Buddha on it with what dead murderers like ground up and put into it and a dead monk or whatever. But there's also a part of the website that's really funny where it's like, if you want us to curse people for you, like just send us some money. We got you. And I'm like, I love that. It's very Mexican in a way, right? So
Yeah, it's kind of spirituality, like almost transactional in nature.
transactional, right? Like it's a lot of Santa Muerte type, like, hey, I need something. Like we go to botanicas all the time. Like my wife's Hispanic. I used to live right on the border of Mexico for a while. And when you go to botanicas and you kind of look at what they got, it's like there'll be candles that are just like, make my husband stop cheating on me. And I love magic like that. It's like, yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, it's practical.
Yeah. Yeah. You're fighting. Gordon's this way too, right? It's war water. It's, you don't want to have to curse a bitch, but if you gotta do what you gotta do. Like,
Oh, absolutely. You
can't
have
have this
to.
like you can't have this like Protestant cold feet about like, well, am I engaging in black magic? Yes, bitch, go do it. You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta win, bro. So
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I think that practical magic gets a bad rap, but I think that it's actually, as I said, more aligned with the age that we're moving into or have moved into. And I also think that it will be about there's something so American about botanical magic. It's like the 7-day candle that's manufactured in like Brooklyn, although a lot of it's Mexico. But like really, like traditionally, like candle supply, like it's a very like New York Jewish based business.
yeah.
And then the botanicas themselves are owned by like a wide variety of immigrants. You have like El Salvadoran ones, you have Mexican one, Puerto Rican ones, Cuban style, Haitian style. So what I'm saying is it brings together all these things. It brings together root work, like hoodoo from the South. It brings together like folk Catholicism from like the small Catholic portion of the South. And it brings that like kind of Dutch powwow and like the weirder California stuff, like the, more like Kenneth Grant will say kind of like Discordian, maybe elements. It brings that all into synthesis. So I actually think that the Botanica, you could say, is like a very important modern American landmark, in my opinion.
Oh, it is. No, they're fantastic. I love going to them. And they're always run by like sassy homosexuals too, which I like as well. It's like I don't know what that's all about, but Gordon's gay. Like I don't know what the gay part is all about, but it does seem like a lot of the best magicians tend to be gay.
Well, it's very hermetic, right?
Right. Right.
You're embodying Hermes and what they perceive as the highest potentiality. So I often think it's I'm not saying it's a choice, but I'm saying that there is a choice to play the archetypes. No, because this is true. This is true with the transgenders. This is true. A lot of them are magicians. A lot of them know. A lot of the left-handed path material.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It says like we're going to embody these political concepts through our magic. Like they literally will say that.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they get it. A lot of them know. They're like, oh, this will be like a great hermetic process. So I'm just Buddhist about it, and I'm like, it's just a process of consciousness. You just have to be single pointed in your will to like get yourself there and travel to any Sephira. I'm using that as a broad map. You can go anywhere you want on the tree. You can travel in any path. You just have to bring yourself there. No, you don't need to necessarily transition. Like I'm hermetic because I'm biracial. So you could say that. Or I'm a millennial. Millennials are very much a threshold generation, right? So there's something innately hermetic about that.
What's your other race? Chinese and what?
French Canadian.
Hey. So white.
Here's white. but like kind of ethnic white for North America. It's kind of like being a Southerner in a way, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's something similar about it. It's kind of weird and considered like a little tacky, a little maybe class coded.
Yeah,
a
that's
little,
so where I come from, right, is mostly Polish, right? So Eastern European, and then on my dad's side, where the Osborne comes from, it's French and Welsh. So I'm all white. I'm just all white, but I do like that. The Polish side is cool. Like I think Polish people are pretty cool.
yeah.
But yeah, no. And then my son is he's an even deeper mix because his mom's from Mexico, so he's much more threshold than I am. But the Poles are a cool, weird ethnicity, I think. Like they're just I don't know if you've ever seen like Polish movie posters.
Yes, they're amazing.
They're amazing.
They're incredible. True Kino.
Yeah, Kino shit. But and then the French side and the Welsh side, like I don't know about that, but yeah, no, the melting pot of America, man.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. That's what I think too.
And Canada, I guess in this case, right?
Well, we're hoping, we're fingers crossed for 51st.
Yeah. It's important.
We're putting it out into the either wave.
Yeah, when I heard that, I was like, why is that a bad idea? I don't understand why.
No, it's a great idea.
I was like,
A great idea.
and a lot of Canadian people were like, no, fuck that. Like, we're Canada. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, but there's different parts of America that have their own identity. Like, Californians do not relate to Floridians at all, much less New Yorkers, much less Texans. So why not just have Canada be a part of that? Seems like a good idea.
You know, I'm all about pragmatism, so it seems very pragmatic for the US to do so. So I'll just say that. And, yeah, you know what? I'm cool with it. I've lived in the US before, so no problem. I like
Where'd you live?
Americans. All over, but Southern California mostly.
Southern California is a great spot. It's so good. Like Southern California, like all along the border, it's fucking amazing. You want to know my favorite place in America is Taos, New Mexico. I want to live in Taos so bad. So
Really?
yeah, so it's Pueblo Indians, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of like Pueblo structures there. My wife and I went there about a year and a half ago. We're going back next month. But that's where I want to kind of retire. And a fun synchronicity happened too when I was in Taos. So we were there. It was the winter. It's the high desert. There was a dusting of snow. We're in this like Airbnb cabin, drinking coffee and writing and watching movies and just kind of hanging out and vibing. And I was on my phone and I saw this like tweet that was like a picture of Dennis Hopper. And Dennis Hopper had invited Alejandro Jodorowsky to his house in Taos, right? And so the picture was of them in Taos together. And I was like, this is where I should be. So one day I might go there to live permanently.
Sorry to interrupt you, David. Jodo, though, might be the most interesting sort of wizard of filmmaking who is openly like a crazy occultist. And I'm not saying crazy is a pejorative, but just like so openly an occultist for his time.
Yep.
He's almost like a Kenneth Grant character or even a Crowley character.
Yeah.
He doesn't really get enough credit for like, you know, like there's a lot of deep.
Did you say Kenneth Grant?
Yeah, I think he's a very similar kind of character.
I read a Kenneth Grant. I read a Kenneth Grant book. What was it about? It was about demons. It's like a Lovecraftian book. It was what was that book? I read it on my Kindle years ago now, but it was good. And so like figures like that, I look out at the modern landscape and I see these kind of magicians, like they're either dying or they've kind of become Grant Morrisonified. And I don't mean to. I totally get
what you're saying, David. I totally agree.
He became a they them, and you know, it's kind of like
there's too much.
We need that to come back, right? Like we need people creating things who are crazy occultists, basically. And there was this like just when I was growing up, I really looked up to Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, even though they hated each other. And now I look out there and I'm like, who is out there? Nobody. So it's got to be me. Like I got to do it.
Well, it's you right now. So
nobody else is going to do it. So I'll do it. I'll go on podcasts and talk about how ghosts are real. You know?
No, absolutely. I think it's great. I think, yeah, for sure. I think you should do it. 100%. I think it can be you. I think it should be you. And, it could also be Kelby. So,
Yeah, we're two sides of the same coin. He's much more.
That's right.
He's like the evil version of me, basically.
It's just like the film, right?
Yeah.
You have the apotheosis, the Buddha, but then you also he's also the Buddha. He's just the reflection downwards.
Yeah, I think that's why Kelby and I work so well. Is that like we're best buds, but he's also he's somebody who will actually kill somebody, and I'm not that guy. So that's where Kelby and I split. Like Kelby will pull up on somebody. That's Agitator, folks. If you want to go check it out.
Well, my secret dream was to be a Asian film podcaster, but a lot of the Asian film guys have me blocked on Twitter, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that just won't happen. I have a couple people that follow me. Dylan Chung, he's really cool. I'd love to have him on. You should have him on your show.
I was on Dylan Chung, noted. I was on I think you mentioned him. But I literally have a tab open now to the Spiral Seas Substack.
Yeah, Jugoku. Okay, so that's the guy referenced right at the beginning.
It's really good shit. It's good shit, man. Like
Yeah,
this
he's good.
Substack is good. I think that I'm reading his The Mad Laughing God series right now, and it's fire. It's good shit. But yeah, man, I think that I'm sorry. Go continue with your thought. I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. He's friend of the pod and like a personal friend of mine, and I think his work should get more exposure. No, I think it's interesting because I think it's like I think you call it alt-lit, but not like the alt-lit that you say you're not a part of anymore. Kind of like what you're doing. I think though that's the vehicle. I think that's the vehicle for like the Magi-writers, rather than being like, there's something even with Grant. So you could say like, for all his like prowess as a magician, he fell prey to like the most common klipa, was to think that you're Hermes right off the get and be like, yeah, I'm gonna this hermetic action, but it's really ideological. So it's like, it's not well formed. It's not like I'm going to do this as like a life/ritual action. It's much more influenced by the delusional thinking.
Right.
In the film, he even talks about it. So the teacher asks us like, what is love? And he says, love is a word. Words do not have substance, but they can be related as sounds. So
beautiful.
In democracy, the answer actually is parallel. So that's a very tantric, discursive way to sort of engage with questions of the universe and like the mythopoesis of the world, the meta-ontologies.
Yeah, good shit. Fun.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate it so much. It was awesome to be in dialogue with you, and if you liked it.
Oh, dude, I had a great time. I want to come back, and you should come on. You should come on Agitator. Let's watch a movie and talk about it.
Hell yeah. You should do a Chinese movie, but you don't have to. We can do anything.
Oh, let's do a Chinese movie. I'm getting more into this because like I'm fascinated with Wuxia and Shansha. Shansha fiction in particular is very interesting to me. This kind of progression fantasy. And I watch a lot of this guy. He goes by Deathblade on YouTube, but he does a lot of translations of stuff. And so I've been reading a lot of these serialized novels. Like, let me pull up. I actually have a Wuxia World on my phone. So if you'll bear with me for just a moment, I'll pull it up and talk.
We can talk all about Wuxia as long as you want. Like literally, we can go another 3 hours just on this one topic. It's my favorite topic of all.
So this is Wuxia World, right? And in my, let's see. So I've been reading, it's called Beyond the Timescape, and it's by this guy, Ergen, Ergen. And Ergen has written a bunch of really, like, I Will Shake the Heavens, I think, is another one of his, but he writes these sprawling, long Jianxia novels. And I don't know, it's fascinating to me. Like, ultimately, I would really like to write something in that kind of vein, kind of like a cultivation progression fantasy. There's another one called 1,000 Li that's really good. But there's a real revolution happening where the whites are finding Jianxia and adapting it. But unfortunately, they're not very good writers. But plot-wise, it's all very fascinating to me.
You know, you're doing this genre fiction thing, which is like I always say, genre fiction carries the most potential, the most seed. Because within the conventions, you can remix it. Sort of like ready-made for you to break and make and remake.
100%. 100%. Well, dude, man, that's fucking really cool to hear. Yeah, no, I feel like this is all going to really work out, like, really well. And there might have been some magical workings involved in the process, right? But you know, it's all coming together. And one really important thing is the sudden reemergence of Takashi Miike as a figure, right? Like, I saw two very important news stories, which is one, he's doing a Bad Lieutenant movie, Bad Lieutenant Tokyo, which is premiering at Cannes. And then the second one is that he's making a movie with Charlie XCX. And right now, I'm completely confident that I'm living in the time stream that I worked for. And I'm very excited to see where it goes.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I don't follow pop music like at all, but there are definitely like hermetic ideas that she relates through her public persona, her music, and through like the visual presentation in videos, performances. So I agree with you. That might be a very interesting.
It's interesting. If people want to hear more of me talking about Charlie, there's a really good episode of the I'm So Popular podcast with Zach Lindley Chichi, where we talk about Charlie XCX the whole time. So
awesome. Well, I'm gonna check that out. Okay. Well, thank you so much, David. I'm gonna let you plug anything you want to plug before we end, but I really appreciate this incredible conversation. I kind of realized I was like, oh, how am I gonna deal with this? Then I realized, okay, I can actually just treat him like a fellow magician on the path, and I think it worked out great.
No, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, everybody, please. This book, Gods Fare No Better, it's available on Amazon. I do sell it direct on my site, but you don't have to do that. You can just go to Amazon and get this book, this big, thick, bad boy. It is my proudest achievement. I think I really did something with this one. And get it, read it, review it, tell people about it, message me about it. If you have any questions about what exactly the fuck is going on in the back third of the book, feel free to let me know. But listen to Agitator, and yeah, stop taking shit seriously, guys. Like, relax a little bit. That's my parting mission. Relax.
And listen to Agitator. It's really difficult. I was very much in, we'll say, in like ignorance, and then I came to understanding.
Yeah. It's like it's just fucking retard wisdom, man.
It's great, and as you can know, so everything that a boy could ask for, a millennial boy. So
yeah, there we go.
Thank you so much, David. Appreciate it, and you are like welcome anytime that the threshold is open for you. So please, anytime.
Let's go.